You shouldn't be desperate for those, my friend. You only have, what, 400 followers? You don't need more than that. Don't believe in God. I do not believe in anything. I do not believe in anything. There's no reason to believe in anything. It's irrelevant to believe in anything. And completely unnecessary. Oh, what's up? From Memphis. Nice. I've been to Memphis. Washington. What's up? How are you? Steph with an F. What made you change your views? Well, ultimately, understanding the historical context of the New Testament is what changed my views. Ultimately, realizing that the New Testament is a product of human beings that had arisen out of its own historical context in the midst of all kinds of socio-political chaos. And then it's a product of specific events, namely the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD by the Romans. That's why Christianity exists at all. Yeah, we are still good people, even though we deconstructed. Exactly. It's hard for them to believe that for some reason. They've been so programmed and indoctrinated to believe that you can't be a good person outside of the religion. I'm an ex-Christian, but found Islam instead. I'm sorry to hear that. That's unfortunate. Sorry about that. You should rethink that. New Testament is not reliable at all. It's not historical. It's fiction. Some good fucking content. What denomination were you? Well, that's a long story. I grew up Church of Christ, but I reformed theologically and went to a Reformed theological seminary, Westminster Theological Seminary. It's a Presbyterian seminary. What is that? That's cool. Christopher, what's up? Thank you. I've never seen that one. That's cool. Panther Pauls. That's awesome. Similar when I was a believer that you couldn't have morals without it. Right, Steph. I know. I mean, I did too. And I also said things like, yeah, thank you, my friend. I really appreciate that. I also said things like, there are no true atheists. They all believe in God. They know there's a God deep down, and I'm not an atheist. I'm not a theist. I'm not an atheist. I don't label myself at all. Hey, thanks for the rose. Catching 65. I don't label myself at all. So I'm not anything. I am. That's what I can say about myself. I am. And that's all I need to say about myself. I don't have to label myself. Labels perpetuate separation. They create separation. They perpetuate the illusion of separation. And separation is really just an illusion. So anything like religion or politics or labels that just continue to drive us from one another and away from one another, and divide us up and separate us and just perpetuate that illusion of separation, it's really unfortunate. Why do you think the disciples were faithful even unto death? Those are myths. There are zero. Those stories were concocted long, long, long after the supposed deaths of the apostles. Do a little bit of research and you'll see that they're unreliable. They're not history. Yeah, the parrots have arrived. They're not history at all. They're unreliable. They were concocted long after the supposed events. There are zero eyewitness accounts of those events. Zero. And all you have to do is do a little bit of research to see that. And stop believing what your pastors and teachers tell you, and stop believing what tradition tells you. Go on your own journey and do some research for yourself and find out that those things are just concocted stories. They're the products of human beings trying to legitimize their own religion. Jesus is very real. Jesus is very not real. And the Jesus you read about in the New Testament never existed. I'm not saying there wasn't uh, um, a guy named Jesus that these stories may be loosely based on. There were several messianic people, figures that rose up in the time. There were several prophetic and messianic people claiming to be prophets, claiming to be the Messiah, leading up to all these events in 70 CE. But what you read about in the New Testament is complete fiction. It's made up. It's made up. And, it's not that I'm not saying that whoever wrote all of these books were intentionally coming up with myths. I mean, there were stories told of stories of stories of stories, eventually found themselves written down, but they're just not true. It's all about the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. That's what the New Testament is all about. And the Bible is a product of human beings. That's it. My question to you is, were you ever really in the faith? I tell people this, and I mean it with all my heart. I was a pastor for several years. I have a master's of arts in religion from Westminster Theological Seminary, and I was the most genuine, sincere, faithful Christian I've ever known, and that's and that means a lot. I have never known a Christian that was as sincere, genuine, and faithful and hardcore and radical as I was. I mean, I sold all of my possessions to follow Jesus. I lived by faith for years. And I've read the Bible more times than anybody on this live probably. I've translated, I learned Hebrew and Greek so that I could know God more. I've translated more scriptures than most Christians have read. So, yeah, I really believed. I really, truly believed with all my heart, with all my heart. But I intellectually worked my way out of the religion. I couldn't believe it anymore. I discovered so much intellectually that it was impossible for me to believe. I could not believe anymore. It was impossible. It's like walking into a dark room and stepping on a rope and believing it's a snake. You flip on the light, you realize it was never a snake, it's a rope. There's nothing you can do to ever convince yourself that that rope is a snake ever again. It's impossible. And once I intellectually understood the things that I understood about Christianity, it was impossible for me to believe ever again. And I begged God to help me because I truly believed that. I mean, for all these years, I believed. And so at the end, when I intellectually couldn't believe anymore, we share a similar story. Nice. When I intellectually I couldn't believe anymore, I begged God. I said, you know, you know my mind, you know what I understand, you know this path that I've traveled intellectually. You know that I can't believe these things anymore. So you're gonna have to help me. And of course, there was silence as the result and answer, because there is no God out there to answer those prayers and do anything about it. You are what you're seeking. When you're seeking a God out there, you're seeking something from a book like the Bible or the Quran or the Book of Mormon, or you're seeking something from a pastor or a preacher. Thank you for the rose. You're seeking something out there. And the truth is, what you're seeking is right here inside. It's you. You're what you're seeking, the real you, beyond the ego, beyond the mask.